If you've spent any time reading about Florida UFO encounters, you've probably heard of the Crest View Elementary incident. There's a good reason for that. It wasn't one person driving down a lonely road at midnight. It wasn't somebody fishing alone in the Everglades. This happened on a sunny Friday morning during elementary school recess. April 7th, 1967. More than 200 students, teachers, and staff poured onto the playground when children began pointing toward an open field behind the school. Within seconds, recess wasn't recess anymore. It was complete chaos. Sixth grade teacher Virginia Martin later said she was trying to line the children back up when she finally looked toward the field herself. Then she understood why nobody was listening. Hovering beyond a line of pine trees was a smooth silver object unlike anything she'd ever seen. Fourth grade teacher Bob Apfel and sixth grade teacher Marion Waters also watched as the strange craft moved over the field. The object wasn't simply passing overhead. Witnesses said it hovered, drifted toward the school, backed away, then dropped below the tops of the pine trees until it disappeared from view. A few moments later, it slowly rose back above the trees again. One student, Andy Cohen, later described seeing two objects. He told reporters they looked like long cigars flying apart from one another, one at a time. He also remembered that several of the girls became hysterical as they watched. Imagine being 9 years old. 1 minute you're trading baseball cards. The next you're standing against the school fence with 200 other kids watching something no one could identify. What makes this encounter especially fascinating is that it didn't end at the school. Later that day, local resident Mary Trusser called the newspaper after hearing about the excitement. She said she had also seen an unusual oval-shaped object with red lights hovering just above the trees in the same area. April 7, 1967, location: Opa-locka, Florida. Suddenly this wasn't just a playground full of excited children. Adults away from the school were reporting unusual objects too. Even more intriguing, teachers later told investigators that similar metallic objects had been seen the previous day as well. So, whatever people were reporting, April 7th wasn't necessarily the beginning. By that afternoon, investigators from Homestead Air Force Base had arrived at the school to interview teachers and administrators. Researchers who later tried to investigate the case found that information had become surprisingly difficult to obtain. One civilian investigator was told the Air Force had already taken over the investigation, and school officials declined to discuss the incident until the military had finished interviewing witnesses. That only added another layer of mystery. Then there was Dr. J. Allen Hynek's colleague, astronomer Dr. James Lillian, who reviewed the conditions that morning. After checking the astronomical and atmospheric possibilities, he concluded that the witnesses weren't describing planets, stars, weather balloons, or other common sky phenomena. What they reported simply didn't match the usual explanations people mistake for unusual objects. Today the original school and surrounding neighborhood have changed, but the location is still there. Stand outside on a bright South Florida morning, look across the open sky, and it's surprisingly easy to picture the scene. Teachers abandoning lesson plans, kids pressed against the chain-link fence, 200 people all staring toward the same patch of sky, trying to understand what they were seeing. Nearly 60 years later, the Crest View Elementary incident remains one of Florida's most compelling UFO encounters, not because someone claimed to have met aliens, but because so many ordinary people all reported witnessing something extraordinary at exactly the same time. And honestly, if the recess bell rang while that thing was still hovering over the field, I don't think I'd have gone back to math class either. Picture this: it's April of 1967, you're 9 years old, you're standing on the playground, and suddenly one of the kids points into the sky. At first nobody believes him, then somebody else looks, then another. Within seconds, the entire playground is staring upward. According to witnesses, it started with one strange object, then suddenly there were three. The largest was described as an enormous metallic object. Some witnesses later compared it to the size of a cruise ship. Flanking it were two smaller oval or cigar-shaped craft that seemed to circle and weave around the larger one like they were escorting it. Teachers stopped class. Children ran toward the fence. Estimates say somewhere between 100 and 200 students and faculty were all watching the same thing. And here's where the story gets really strange. Witnesses said the objects weren't just floating, they were maneuvering. The two smaller craft appeared to dance around the larger one, changing position with sudden bursts of speed. Then, according to several eyewitnesses, the larger object descended toward an open field beside the school. Some children were convinced. It landed. Imagine being a fourth grader. You're supposed to be learning multiplication. Instead, you're watching what looks like something straight out of a science fiction movie. One former student would later remember everyone pressing against the school fence, trying to get closer. Another recalled that the object suddenly shot toward a line of trees. Instead of crashing, it simply disappeared. Then, just as suddenly, it flashed back into view, as if it had never left. Now the playground was absolute chaos. Kids were yelling, teachers were trying to restore order, and nobody wanted to go back inside, because what if it came back? Years later, former students would reconnect through the internet. Many said they still remembered that morning in remarkable detail. Some insisted they had never changed their story. Not after 10 years, not after 50. Even more intriguing, teachers later told investigators that similar metallic objects had been seen the previous day as well. So whatever people were reporting, April 7th wasn't necessarily the beginning. That only added another layer of mystery. Then there was Dr. J. Allen Hynek's colleague, astronomer Dr. James Lillian, who reviewed the conditions that morning. After checking the astronomical and atmospheric possibilities, he concluded that the witnesses weren't describing planets, stars, weather balloons, or other common sky phenomena. What they reported simply didn't match the usual explanations people mistake for unusual objects, whether this was something extraordinary, or simply one of those moments where perfectly ordinary events looked incredibly strange. We'll probably never know, but I actually like that, because mysteries aren't interesting because we solve every one of them. They're interesting because every once in a while, there's just enough evidence to keep asking questions. Alright, your turn. Have you ever visited a place because of a mystery? Not because you expected to see something, but because you wanted to stand where the story happened. I'd love to hear where it was, because some of my favorite Oddity Atlas adventures have started with a comment from someone just like you. To me, after spending the last several years wandering around Florida, I've learned something. The places with the biggest mysteries almost never look mysterious. They're usually kind of normal. An empty beach, a forgotten dirt road, a swamp full of mosquitoes that apparently have a personal grudge against me, or an ordinary elementary school where, on one Friday morning in 1967, over 200 students and teachers all stopped what they were doing because something appeared over the trees that nobody could explain. That's why I love making these videos. Not because I expect to solve every mystery, but because I get to stand where they happened. I've crawled through abandoned forts, I've followed stories into the middle of the Everglades, I've chased legends that turned out to be complete nonsense, and a few that left me wondering what on earth really happened. Every once in a while, I find a place that refuses to let go of your imagination. This is one of those places.